I was at work when I got a call from my parents and they demanded me to come home at once. If you don't show up, you're not family anymore and we won't invite you anywhere, they said. When I reached home, they announced in front of 23 people that we are all going on holiday. When we reached our destination, they made an announcement at dinner. Well, now that you're here, we have decided that you are to be kicked out of the family and you won't be going back with us. No man has ever touched you nor even looked at you. My sister's 7-year-old girl said, "Why does Aunt wear old stinky clothes?" Mom laughed, "Some people just don't know how to take care of themselves." I just smiled and said, "Okay, but I will make every single one of you regret this decision." A few weeks later, my phone blew up. "I'm Sarah, and I need to tell you about the most devastating betrayal that turned into the sweetest revenge of my life. This happened 3 months ago, and I'm still processing everything that went down." I was sitting at my desk at the accounting firm where I worked, reviewing quarterly reports, when my phone rang. It was my mother, Linda. "Sarah, you need to come home right now," she said in that sharp tone I knew meant business. "Mom, I'm at work. Can this wait until?" "No, it cannot wait. If you don't show up within the hour, you're not family anymore and we won't invite you anywhere ever again." My heart dropped. Despite everything, my family meant the world to me. I grabbed my purse, told my boss Mark I had a family emergency, and drove the 45 minutes to my childhood home in Riverside. When I pulled into the driveway, I was shocked. The street was packed with cars I recognized: my sister Jessica's minivan, my cousin David's truck, my aunt Patricia's sedan, and about 12 others. What was going on? I walked through the front door to find 18 family members crammed into our living room. Everyone was there: my parents Linda and Robert, my sister Jessica with her husband Mike and their daughter Emma, my brothers Tom and Alex with their wives, my grandparents, a few aunts, uncles, and cousins. They were all laughing and chatting excitedly about something. "Sarah," my father Robert boomed when he saw me. "Perfect timing. We have an announcement." My mother stood up, beaming. "We've planned a surprise family vacation to Cabo San Lucas. We leave tomorrow morning." The room erupted in cheers and excited chatter. I stood there stunned. A family vacation to Mexico? We'd never done anything like this before. My family wasn't exactly wealthy, so this seemed incredibly out of character. "Mom, Dad, this is amazing, but I can't just take time off work with 1 day's notice. It's already handled," my father interrupted. "Mark is a family friend. We called him and explained it was a family emergency. You're covered for 2 weeks." I felt dizzy. They'd contacted my boss without asking me? And how were they affording this trip for almost 20 people? "But the cost, don't worry about money," my mother said dismissively. "Your Uncle Harold came into some inheritance, and he's treating the whole family. Consider it a celebration of our family bond." Uncle Harold nodded and smiled, though something in his expression seemed off. I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was looking at me strangely, like they knew something I didn't. The next morning, we all met at the airport. I'd barely had time to pack, throwing together whatever clean clothes I could find. I'll admit, my wardrobe wasn't the most fashionable. I spent most of my money on rent and student loans, so shopping wasn't a priority. But my family had never cared about that before. The flight to Cabo was surreal. Everyone was in such high spirits, but I noticed people whispering and glancing at me. My sister Jessica kept giggling with her daughter Emma, and when I tried to join their conversation, they'd suddenly go quiet. We arrived at a beautiful resort right on the beach. I'd never stayed anywhere so luxurious. The rooms were gorgeous, the food was incredible, and the staff treated us like royalty. For the first day, I almost forgot about the weird vibes and just tried to enjoy this unexpected gift. But that evening at dinner, everything fell apart. We were all gathered in the resort's private dining room, the whole family seated around this massive table overlooking the ocean. The sunset was beautiful, and I was actually feeling grateful for this incredible opportunity when my father stood up. "Everyone, I need to make an announcement," Robert said, his voice carrying across the room. The conversations died down, and all eyes turned to him. I noticed my mother Linda smiling in a way that made my stomach clench. "Well, now that Sarah is here with us, we've decided that she's going to be kicked out of the family, and she won't be going back with us." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What?" I whispered. My mother stood up beside him, her smile turning cruel. "You heard correctly, Sarah. We've all discussed it, and we've decided you're no longer part of this family. No man has ever touched you, nor even looked at you. You're 32 years old, and you're still alone. It's embarrassing." The table went dead silent except for the sound of waves crashing outside. I looked around at 18 faces, people I'd grown up with, people I'd loved my entire life, and not one of them looked surprised. Not one of them stood up for me. "We've tolerated your pathetic existence long enough," Linda continued. "Look at you. You can't even dress yourself properly. That's when my 7-year-old niece Emma piped up in her innocent voice, "Why does Aunt Sarah wear old stinky clothes?" The entire table burst into laughter. My own niece, Jessica's daughter, the little girl I'd bought Christmas presents for, whose birthday parties I'd attended, was mocking me. My mother laughed the loudest. "Some people just don't know how to take care of themselves, sweetheart." I sat there for a moment, the humiliation washing over me in waves. These people had lured me here under false pretenses, made me use up my vacation time, and brought me to a foreign country just to publicly humiliate and abandon me. But then something shifted inside me. A cold, calm anger settled over me like armor. I smiled, really smiled, for the first time since arriving. "Okay," I said quietly. "But I will make every single one of you regret this decision." My father scoffed. "What are you going to do, Sarah? You can barely take care of yourself." I stood up slowly, still smiling. "I guess we'll find out, won't we?" I walked out of that dining room with my head held high, leaving behind 18 people who thought they'd just delivered the ultimate humiliation. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. I spent that night in my hotel room, not crying, but planning. See, there were some things my family didn't know about me. Some very important things. First, they didn't know that I wasn't just any accountant. I was a forensic accountant who specialized in financial fraud investigations. I worked for one of the most prestigious firms in the state, and I was very, very good at what I did. I helped law enforcement agencies uncover embezzlement schemes worth millions. I testified in federal court cases. I had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when it came to following paper trails. My colleagues called me the Bloodhound because once I caught a scent of financial irregularities, I never let go. I'd spent 8 years building this expertise, working 60-hour weeks, taking advanced courses in fraud detection, earning certifications that most people had never heard of. While my family thought I was just a boring numbers cruncher, I was actually one of the most sought-after forensic accountants in the region. Second, they didn't know that over the years, I'd helped several family members with their taxes and financial planning. I had access to information they'd forgotten they'd given me. Tax returns, business documents, bank statements, loan applications. They'd handed me everything over the years because Sarah's good with numbers. They trusted me with their financial secrets because they saw me as harmless, pathetic Sarah who would never use the information against them. I remembered helping Tom set up his construction company's books 5 years ago. He'd been so grateful when I showed him legitimate ways to organize his expenses and maximize his deductions. I'd been thorough and professional then, thinking I was helping family. I didn't realize he would later take my legitimate advice and push it into illegal territory without my knowledge. I remembered Jessica asking me to look over Mike's business taxes 3 years running. His cash-heavy landscaping business had seemed legitimate to me at the time, but I'd been naive about how cash businesses could be manipulated. What a mistake it had been to trust their honesty. And third, they didn't know that my old stinky clothes were actually a carefully crafted persona I developed. See, I'd learned early on that when people underestimated you, they got sloppy. They said things they shouldn't say. They left paper trails they shouldn't leave. The dowdy appearance had started in college when I realized that male professors took me more seriously when I wasn't distractingly attractive. Then in my early career, I noticed that suspects in financial fraud cases would say things around me they'd never say around my more polished colleagues. They saw a frumpy woman in discount clothes and assumed I was incompetent, overlooked, forgettable. So I cultivated the look deliberately. Baggy clothes from discount stores, minimal makeup, unflattering haircuts. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic when I could afford a BMW. I lived in a modest apartment when I could afford a house. I let my family think I was struggling financially when I was actually investing aggressively in building wealth. The irony was delicious. They mocked my appearance while I was secretly more successful than any of them. They pitied my single status while I was deliberately avoiding relationships that might complicate my career goals. They thought I was a failure when I was actually playing a long game they couldn't even comprehend. By living well below my means and investing 60% of my income for 8 years, I built a portfolio worth over $750,000. Combined with my savings and the equity in rental properties I quietly purchased, I was worth close to $1 million. Not the fantasy wealth of movies, but real, substantial financial security that most people my age could only dream of. I spent the next morning at the resort's business center, using their computers and my laptop to start my investigation. I made some calls to contacts back home. I accessed some databases I had legitimate professional access to. The resort's business center was surprisingly well equipped. I had secure access to several professional databases through my firm's VPN connection, and my credentials allowed me to access legitimate financial investigation tools. I started with what I knew and began connecting dots that my family never realized existed. My first call was to my colleague Jennifer at the firm. She specialized in tax fraud cases and owed me a favor from a case I'd helped her with last year. Sarah? Where are you calling from? It sounds like you're at a beach resort. Long story. Jen, I need a favor. I need you to run some preliminary checks on a list of individuals and businesses. Completely legitimate, all above board, but I need it done quietly. What kind of checks? Tax compliance, business licensing, workers' compensation filings, the usual. I'll email you the details. Jennifer was silent for a moment. Sarah, this isn't like you. What's going on? Let's just say I've discovered that some people I trusted have been lying to me about more than I realized. Family? How did you guess? Because you sound like someone who just found out their whole life was built on lies. I've heard that tone before. Email me the list. While I waited for Jennifer's preliminary report, I started digging into what I could access myself. I pulled up public records, business filings, property records. I cross-referenced dates and amounts. I built spreadsheets tracking income sources and expense patterns. What I found made my blood run cold. The pattern went back 7 years. Tom's construction company had been systematically underreporting income while overreporting expenses. Mike's landscaping business was a cash laundering operation disguised as lawn care. My Aunt Patricia was running a fake consulting business that existed only to create fraudulent deductions for the family. But the real shocker was my parents. They weren't just passively benefiting from everyone else's schemes, they were the masterminds. My father Robert had been using his position at his company to create fake vendor accounts that funneled money to family businesses. My mother Linda was running the books for half these operations, using her experience as a former bookkeeper to make everything look legitimate. The Cabo trip wasn't funded by Uncle Harold's fake inheritance. It was funded by 7 years of coordinated tax fraud, with my parents skimming money from every family member's scheme to build a slush fund for family expenses. And the timing of this trip, the timing of my public humiliation, it wasn't random. My father was about to be investigated at work. Someone had reported irregularities in the vendor accounts. They needed me out of the picture before I could accidentally discover what they'd been doing. They'd planned to abandon me in Mexico not just to be cruel, but to protect themselves. They knew that if I found out about their crimes, my professional ethics would require me to report them. So they decided to destroy me first, discredit me, make sure that if I ever tried to expose them, I'd look like a vindictive family outcast making up stories. Jennifer called me back 2 hours later. Sarah, what have you stumbled into? That bad? That extensive? I've got red flags on every single name you gave me. Tax liens, unreported income, suspicious business activity, workers' comp fraud. It's like you handed me a directory of white-collar criminals. How solid is the evidence? Solid enough that if this were an official investigation, I'd be recommending criminal charges across the board. Sarah, some of these people are your family members. Are you sure you want to pursue this? I looked out at the beautiful Mexican sunset, thinking about the 23 people who had laughed while a 7-year-old called me stinky. Jennifer, let me ask you something. If you discovered that people you loved had been committing crimes for years, and then they publicly humiliated you to cover their tracks, what would you do? I'd burn them all down and salt the earth. That's what I thought you'd say. I spent the next 3 days in that business center, building the most comprehensive financial fraud case of my career. I documented every transaction, every discrepancy, every pattern of suspicious activity. I built timelines showing how the schemes had evolved and expanded. I identified the specific laws that had been broken and the agencies that would be most interested in each violation. By the time I was finished, I had enough evidence to destroy all of them. Not just financially, but criminally. Some of them were looking at potential jail time. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more investigation to complete. I called my friend Marcus, who worked in private investigation and specialized in background checks for high-stakes corporate litigation. Marcus, I need you to dig into something for me. I need to know everything about how this vacation was planned, who was involved, and whether anyone tried to back out or warn me. What kind of timeline are we talking about? I need to know if this was a spontaneous decision or if they'd been planning to get rid of me for months. What Marcus found was worse than I'd imagined. The planning had started 8 months ago. There were email chains between my family members discussing the Sarah problem. There were text messages debating the best way to cut her loose. There were even discussions about whether they should tell me the truth or just abandon me somewhere. My brother Alex had suggested they just stop inviting me to family events and let me figure it out on my own. My Aunt Patricia had proposed they stage an intervention about my lifestyle choices. But my mother Linda had insisted on something more dramatic, more final, more cruel. She needs to understand that she doesn't belong, Linda had written in one email. She needs to be humiliated enough that she'll never try to come back. The most devastating discovery was that Uncle Harold had tried to warn me. 3 weeks before the trip, He called my office and left a voicemail asking me to call him about something important regarding the family. I'd been busy with a case and had forgotten to call him back. He tried to save me, and I'd been too distracted to listen. Marcus also uncovered the real reason for their urgency. My father's company wasn't just investigating him, they'd already found evidence of his fraud and were preparing to fire him and press charges. The family knew they had maybe weeks before everything collapsed, so they'd accelerated their timeline to get rid of me before I could become a liability. They'd used the last of their stolen money to fund this trip, planning to return home and declare bankruptcy while I was stranded in Mexico trying to figure out how to get home. They calculated that by the time I made it back to the States, their financial crimes would already be public knowledge, and my accusations would look like revenge rather than legitimate whistleblowing. It was brilliant, in a sociopathic way. Destroy the one family member who could expose them while making it look like a family dispute rather than criminal activity. Too bad for them that they'd underestimated exactly how good I was at my job. The flight home was awkward, to say the least. I was on the same plane as my family, but I sat alone while they clustered together, occasionally glancing at me and whispering. They probably thought I was crying into my overpriced airport tissues. I wasn't. I was reviewing my notes and making more calls. When we landed, I took a taxi home while they all went their separate ways, probably congratulating themselves on finally getting rid of the family embarrassment. They had no idea the storm that was coming. I spent the next week working with laser focus. I submitted reports to the appropriate agencies. I provided evidence to the right people. I made sure everything was documented and legally bulletproof. But before I pulled the trigger on destroying my entire family, I did something that surprised even me. I tried to give them one last chance. I called my mother 3 days after we returned from Mexico. Mom, we need to talk. Sarah, I hope you've had time to think about what happened. Maybe now you can focus on improving yourself instead of being a burden on the family. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about Uncle Harold's inheritance. There was a pause. What about it? Well, I was curious, so I did some research. Uncle Harold hasn't received any inheritance recently. In fact, his financial situation is pretty much the same as it's been for years. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Mom. I'm stating facts. The money for the Cabo trip didn't come from Uncle Harold's inheritance. So where did it come from? I don't have to explain our family finances to you. You're not part of this family anymore, remember? You're right, I'm not. Which means I'm no longer bound by family loyalty when it comes to financial irregularities I might observe. The silence stretched between us for nearly a minute. What do you want, Sarah? I want you to come clean. All of you. I want you to voluntarily report your tax violations, pay the back taxes and penalties, and stop the fraud. Do that, and I'll walk away and never speak to any of you again. I don't know what you think you know, Mom. I know about Tom's construction company underreporting income. I know about Mike's cash business. I know about Patricia's fake consulting company. I know about Dad's vendor fraud at work. And I know that you've been coordinating it all, using your bookkeeping skills to make it look legitimate. This time the silence was deafening. You have 1 week, I continued. 1 week to make this right voluntarily. After that, I start making phone calls to people who aren't family. You wouldn't. You've humiliated me in front of our entire family, including coaching a 7-year-old to mock me. You abandoned me in a foreign country after luring me there under false pretenses. You did all of this to cover up years of financial crimes. So yes, Mom, I absolutely would. Sarah, please, 1 week. And if I were you, I'd start with Dad's situation at work. I have it on good authority that his company already knows about the vendor fraud. He's going to be fired and probably arrested within days. I hung up. I knew they wouldn't take the deal. People who are narcissistic enough to publicly destroy a family member aren't capable of admitting they were wrong about anything. But I needed to know, for my own peace of mind, that I'd given them a chance to do the right thing. They didn't take it. Instead, my brother Tom called me the next day, furious. What the hell do you think you're doing, threatening Mom? I wasn't threatening anyone, Tom. I was offering an opportunity to resolve this quietly. Resolve what? You're making up stories because you're bitter about what happened in Mexico. Am I? Tom, do you want me to read you the specifics of your workers' compensation fraud? Because I have documentation going back 3 years. You're bluffing. In 2022, you filed a claim for an employee named Rodriguez who allegedly injured his back on a job site. You collected $47,000 in compensation payments. The problem is, Rodriguez was never injured. He's your cousin, and you split the money. Tom's breathing became audible over the phone. In 2023, you filed claims for 3 different employees who were allegedly injured in the same month. Statistical analysis shows the probability of that happening legitimately is less than 2%. But what's really interesting is that all 3 injured employees share the same address, an address that belongs to your wife's brother. Sarah, you don't understand, and in 2024, you filed 6 fraudulent claims totaling $127,000. I have bank records showing the money being funneled through shell accounts before being distributed to family members. We needed the money. Do you know how expensive it is to raise kids these days? Then get a legitimate job, Tom. Don't commit fraud and drag children into your crimes. You're really going to destroy your own family? You destroyed it first. I'm just documenting what you already did. That conversation confirmed what I already knew: they were going to fight this instead of taking responsibility. Which meant I was free to proceed with the nuclear option. I made my first official report that afternoon. And then I waited. The first call came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 18 days after the Cabo incident. It was my cousin David. "Sarah, what the hell did you do?" he screamed into the phone. "Good morning, David. I'm doing well, thanks for asking. The IRS is auditing me. They froze my bank accounts. My wife is freaking out." "That sounds stressful. Have you considered getting a good tax attorney?" "You did this. I know you did this." "David, I'm a forensic accountant. If you've been properly reporting your income and paying your taxes, you have nothing to worry about." The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few days, my phone rang constantly. Tom calling because the state was investigating his construction company for workers' comp fraud. Jessica crying because they were looking into her husband Mike's cash-heavy side business. My Aunt Patricia hysterical because the state tax board was asking very uncomfortable questions about her consulting income. But the best call came from my mother. "Sarah Elizabeth, you get down here right now and fix this." Linda shrieked. "Fix what, Mom?" "You know what? The IRS, the state, everyone is crawling all over our finances. This is your fault. Actually, it's the natural consequence of not properly reporting taxable income. I don't have anything to fix. You're our daughter. You have to help us." I believe your exact words were that I was no longer part of the family. That I wouldn't be going back with you. That you decided to kick me out. The silence stretched between us. We didn't mean it," she said finally, her voice smaller. "Oh, but you did. You planned it. All 23 of you knew what was going to happen. You brought me to another country to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved." "Sarah, please," Emma asked why I wear old stinky clothes, and you laughed. "You told a 7-year-old that some people just don't know how to take care of themselves. Do you remember that, Mom?" "We were just. And do you know what's really funny? Those old stinky clothes you mocked? They're from Target and Walmart because I've been sending $3,000 a month to an investment account for the past 8 years. I'm worth $1.2 million, Mom. I could buy and sell half the people at that table." Another silence. "But I dressed down because I learned that when people think you're pathetic, they underestimate you. They get sloppy. They leave evidence lying around. They commit crimes and trust the pathetic family member to keep their mouth shut." "Sarah, you have to understand. The only thing I understand is that you spent years planning the cruelest possible way to destroy me. And now you're facing the consequences of your own actions." I hung up. The calls kept coming. Uncle Harold begging me to make it all go away. My brother Alex promising he'd make it up to me if I could just fix things. Even Jessica, sobbing that Emma kept asking why all the scary people in suits kept coming to their house. But the most satisfying call came from an unexpected source. "Aunt Sarah?" It was Emma, my 7-year-old niece. "Hi, sweetheart. Mommy gave me her phone to call you. She's crying a lot." "I'm sorry to hear that. Aunt Sarah, I'm sorry I said your clothes were stinky. Mommy told me to say that." My heart clenched. "She told you to say that?" "Yeah. She said we were all going to play a mean joke on you, but now everyone is sad and scared and Mommy won't stop crying." That innocent little girl had been coached to humiliate me. They'd used a child as a weapon in their cruel game. "Emma, honey, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, and then they have to face the consequences. Are you going to come to my birthday party next month?" "I don't think so, sweetheart. But I hope you have a wonderful time." After I hung up, I did cry a little. Not for myself, but for that little girl who was learning that her family could be cruel and manipulative. But then I received a call that escalated everything. It was from Detective Rodriguez with the state's Financial Crimes Unit. "Ms. Williams, I'm calling because your case has been flagged for expanded investigation. The scope of the fraud you've documented involves multiple jurisdictions and substantial amounts. We'd like to meet with you." "Expanded investigation?" The vendor fraud at your father's company involved contracts with state agencies. And the coordination between multiple family businesses suggests organized financial crime. We're looking at potentially serious charges. This wasn't just about tax problems anymore, they were potentially facing state felony charges, which could mean years in prison. We've been investigating your father's company for 2 months, Detective Rodriguez continued. But your evidence shows this goes much deeper than we realized. This isn't just one man stealing from his employer, this appears to be a coordinated scheme spanning multiple businesses and families. We've been building a case against your father's company for months, Agent Martinez continued. But your evidence shows this goes much deeper than we realized. This isn't just one man stealing from his employer, this is an organized criminal enterprise spanning multiple families and businesses. What do you need from me? Everything you have. And we may need you to testify before a federal grand jury. I met with Detective Rodriguez and his team the following week. They were impressed with the quality of my investigation and the comprehensiveness of my documentation. What had started as a family revenge plot had uncovered a significant financial crime operation. How long have you been working on this? Detective Rodriguez asked, reviewing my files. About 3 weeks. He looked up at me. 3 weeks? This is better than investigations my team has spent 4 months on. I had motivation. We've seen your family's reaction to the initial state investigations. They're panicking, which usually means they're going to make mistakes. We'd like to monitor that. What kind of mistakes? Desperate people do desperate things. They might try to destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses, or make statements that incriminate themselves further. If they do any of those things, it strengthens our case. As if on cue, my phone rang. It was my father, calling from a number I didn't recognize. Answer it, Detective Rodriguez said. Put it on speaker. Hello? Sarah, it's Dad. We need to meet. I don't think that's a good idea. Sarah, this has gone too far. People are going to get hurt. People are getting hurt because of choices you made, not because of anything I did. Look, maybe we can work something out. Maybe there's a way to make this all go away. Detective Rodriguez was taking notes and signaling for me to keep him talking. What kind of way, Dad? Well, maybe we could compensate you for your trouble. Maybe we could make sure you're taken care of financially if you could just redirect your investigation. Are you offering to bribe me to obstruct a criminal investigation? I'm offering to take care of my daughter. Your daughter who you publicly humiliated and abandoned in Mexico? We made a mistake, okay? We're sorry. But destroying the whole family isn't going to fix that. I'm not destroying anything, Dad. I'm simply reporting crimes to the appropriate authorities. Sarah, please. Your mother is having panic attacks. Tom might lose his house. Jessica's marriage is falling apart. Emma keeps asking why everyone is sad all the time. You should have thought about those consequences before you decided to commit financial crimes. We can make this right. No, Dad, you can't. You crossed too many lines, hurt too many people, committed too many crimes. There's no making this right. I hung up. Detective Rodriguez was taking notes furiously. Attempted bribery and obstruction of justice. That's additional charges we can file. Is this really going to help your case? Ms. Williams, your family just made our case stronger. Attempting to bribe a witness in a criminal investigation is serious business. Your father is looking at additional charges just for that phone call. 3 weeks after the Cabo trip, the full scope of the investigation became clear. The agencies had found even more than I'd given them. When you start pulling threads in a family of people who've been cutting corners for years, the whole thing unravels fast. David lost his business and had to sell his house. Tom's construction company was shut down, and he was facing potential jail time. Mike had to pay back taxes that wiped out their savings. My Aunt Patricia lost her car and had to move in with my parents. And my parents? They had to take out a second mortgage on their house to pay their tax debt and legal fees. But the real kicker came when I got a call from my boss, Mark. Sarah, I just got the strangest call from your father. Oh? He wanted to know if we were hiring, and if I'd consider him for a position. Apparently, he needs a job with a steady income to pay off some debts. I nearly choked on my coffee. And what did you tell him? I told him we'd need a reference from his previous employer. When I called the number he gave me, it turned out he'd been fired 3 months ago for falsifying expense reports. So that's how they'd afforded the Cabo trip. My father had stolen money from his company, used it to fund the family vacation, and planned to use that vacation to dump me somewhere I couldn't cause problems when his theft was discovered. They'd planned to abandon me in Mexico while they dealt with the fallout from his crime. But his company had figured it out faster than he'd expected, and now he was facing criminal charges on top of everything else. The final twist came 2 months later. I was at work when I got a call from a lawyer. Ms. Sarah Chen? This is regarding your Uncle Harold's estate. I'm sorry, what? Uncle Harold isn't dead. Actually, he passed away last week. Massive heart attack. He'd been under tremendous stress lately due to some legal troubles. My hands went numb. Uncle Harold was dead? The reason I'm calling is that you're named as the primary beneficiary in his will. That's impossible. I barely spoke to him. According to the documentation, he changed his will 3 weeks ago. He left you a letter. The letter was delivered the next day. Uncle Harold's shaky handwriting filled 2 pages. Sarah, if you're reading this, then the stress finally got to me. The doctor said my heart couldn't take much more. I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. Your parents came to me 6 months ago with their plan. They said you were holding the family back, that you were an embarrassment, and that they needed to cut you loose. They asked me to lie about an inheritance to fund the trip. I should have said no. I should have warned you. But I was weak, and I thought it would be over quickly and you'd move on with your life. I never imagined they were planning something so cruel. When I saw what they did to you at that dinner, when I heard your mother laugh at her own daughter, I was ashamed of myself. When the investigation started and I realized what you'd done, I wasn't angry. I was proud. You showed more strength and intelligence than any of us deserved. I'm leaving you everything, my house, my savings, my investments. It's not much, but it's clean money, earned honestly. Maybe you can use it to build a new life away from all of us. I'm sorry, Sarah. You deserved so much better. Uncle Harold, the inheritance was substantial. His house was worth $400,000, and he had another $300,000 in investments and savings. Combined with my own savings, I was suddenly worth over $2 million. But more than the money, that letter gave me something I'd thought I'd lost forever, the knowledge that at least one person in my family had loved me. 6 months later, I'd made some major changes. I quit my job and started my own forensic accounting firm. Turns out, when word got out that I'd single-handedly exposed a multi-family financial fraud ring, I became pretty popular with lawyers and law enforcement agencies. I bought a beautiful house in the hills overlooking the city. I hired a personal stylist and discovered that when you're not deliberately dressing down to appear harmless, you can actually look pretty amazing. And I started dating. Turns out, my mother was wrong about men never looking at me. When you have confidence, financial security, and aren't surrounded by people who constantly tear you down, dating becomes a lot easier. I met James at a charity fundraiser. He's a prosecutor who specializes in white-collar crime. When I told him my story, he said it was the most impressive investigation he'd ever seen from a civilian. We've been together for 4 months now, and he's everything my family said I'd never have: successful, kind, and crazy about me. The family, meanwhile, has not fared well. The criminal charges against my father resulted in a conviction and 18 months in minimum security prison. My mother had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. She got a job at a grocery store to make ends meet. David declared bankruptcy and moved back in with his parents. Tom lost his contractor's license and now works as a day laborer. Jessica and Mike separated after the financial stress destroyed their marriage, and Emma splits time between them in their tiny rental apartments. My Aunt Patricia ended up homeless for a while before finally getting into subsidized housing. But here's the thing that really gets to me: they're all still blaming me. Not one of them has accepted responsibility for their actions. They still call occasionally, asking me to help them out financially or to fix their problems. The last call I got was from Jessica. Sarah, Emma misses you. Don't you think you've punished us enough? I didn't punish anyone, Jessica. I simply stopped participating in illegal activities and reported crimes to the appropriate authorities. You ruined our lives. You ruined your own lives the moment you decided to commit fraud. You just made it worse by being needlessly cruel about it. Emma asks about you. Emma was coached to humiliate me in front of our entire family. She was 7 years old, and you used her as a weapon. She didn't understand. That makes it worse, not better. You taught a child to be cruel to someone who loved her. We thought. You thought you could destroy me and face no consequences. You were wrong. Last week, I got a wedding invitation. James proposed last month, and we're getting married next spring. It's going to be a small ceremony. His family, my co-workers, a few close friends I've made since cutting ties with my biological family. I'm not inviting any of them. Not because I'm still angry, but because I've realized something important: family isn't about shared DNA. It's about people who love you, support you, and would never dream of humiliating you for sport. I have that now. I have James, who thinks I'm brilliant and beautiful. I have Uncle Harold's memory, proving that even in a family full of toxic people, love can exist. I have a successful business built on my own intelligence and skills. I have financial security that came from my own hard work and smart decisions. Most importantly, I have self-respect. I know now that their treatment of me was never about my appearance or my dating life or my clothes. It was about their own insecurities and failures. They needed a scapegoat, and I was convenient. But I'm not convenient anymore. I'm not anyone's victim or embarrassment or fallback plan. I'm Sarah Chen, and I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about building a life so good that their absence makes it even better. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about both.